You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey guys, what we got?
James, are you ready to name a starting kicker, punter, or quarterback?
No. I love how you referenced it, but no, we have not even done it as a staff yet.
James, have you made decisions on green lights, yellows, and reds yet? And are there any guys who will definitely, bring?
Yeah, we have. Probably better if I brought that list, Chris. Green, yellow, reds next time we get together. But yeah, I met with those guys. So typically, I always meet with them 2 days before we break into what we call D squad or scout team. We did that today. So I met with them 2 days ago. Then their position coaches met with all of them yesterday, and we did do that. So I don't have the list in front of me, but I'll be happy to go through that with you next time.
How do kids deal with that kind of thing? I mean, if they aren't necessarily green, just generally speaking.
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, they're pretty self-aware. I mean, they haven't either broken into the too deep. They kind of see the writing on the wall. There's some guys that aren't. That's always the case. There's some guys that just aren't as realistic with where they're at. So some of those conversations are hard, but most of them, they see it the same way. And what I try to do is probably the week leading up to it, I go around and ask them, where do they see themselves? And I'd say 90% of the group sees themselves the same way the coaches do. Now, the other thing, as we know, is the new red shirt rule kind of changes that. You can still play a ton of football and regain your red shirt. And just because they're not ready right now doesn't mean they won't be ready by game 5.
James, what would you say about the camps that Drew, Shelton, and Caden have had thus far, and how would they progress from the spring until now?
Yeah, Shelton has had a good camp. He's played both sides, both right and left tackle, which we think is important for his development and for us as well. Caden is a little bit like the questions you guys have had with me in the past with the O-line. I don't really like putting it out there in the universe. I'll let you guys tell me kind of where they're at. But I've been very pleased and happy with Caden's approach this camp. He's had a really good, consistent approach. And I'll kind of leave it at that.
James, how is Dante Cephas compared to where you'd like him to be at this point?
Yeah, he's in that group that's battling. We got a competitive group of 4 to 5 guys that are battling. He's part of that conversation. We've had some really good conversations. I think he realizes that this has been different, the adjustment, especially with the DBs and the man-to-man coverage that we play. It's just different. Not saying that he's not a big-time player, but there's a difference between getting up 1 or 2 days a week or 1 or 2 times a year in a season, coming out here every single day with that type of competitiveness that you need to be successful. So it's been a really good adjustment for him. He's handled it really well, and he's part of that group that's competing for those spots.
Are you seeing anything different from Nick and Katron that you didn't see a year ago when they were in camp?
Yeah, I just think, obviously they had really good years in camps last year, but they're different players now. They're bigger, stronger, they're more confident. Physically, they're more confident mentally in their assignments and just understanding major college football and what it takes. They've had really consistent and strong camps.
James, what kind of progress have you seen from Abdul Carter, from the player that we saw last year?
Yeah, same thing. He's bigger and stronger and more confident. I think, Abdul's a perfect example of a guy kind of second half of the season really took off. And he's really kind of kept that momentum through spring ball and summer camp. So we expect him to have a big year for us. We need him to have a big year for us. But I think he's in a much more confident place with what he's going to be able to do within the defense, and has taken on more of a leadership role.
Coach, you mentioned the secondary and the third wide receiver spot is question mark going into camp. Which guys at those positions have been able to separate themselves and prove themselves in camp?
Yeah, kind of like we just talked about at wide receiver, there's a group of guys that are still battling for those spots that were question marks. In the secondary, there's still battle going on between the 4 safeties. There's been some bumps and bruises like there is for every camp, so that's also kind of made it a little bit more interesting. And then at corner, I think the guy that really has had a strong camp is Johnny Dixon, has taken a significant step. We think we got 2 really good corners and 2 corners that are very physical and are tough guys, which can be unusual. But I think he's probably been a guy that's taken a significant step, and then there's a bunch of young players that we think will rotate in and contribute as well.
James, towards the beginning of camp, you said Jaxon was maybe the surprise of camp thus far. It's been a few weeks since media day. How would you say he's been progressing in the few weeks since that time?
Yeah, he may throw the best deep ball. He's got a really good understanding of touch and velocity and angle, that is necessary. He's still learning, in terms of in the meeting rooms and out on the field, all the different things that we ask in the run game and in the pass game and with protection. So he's still learning, but really has the ability to find receivers and be accurate as a passer. So he continues to do well, and it really is a part of a ongoing conversation at that position.
How do position battles change once you start focusing on the season? Because in the off season, guys can compete for a position, but then I'm sure that you have to start preparing for an opponent. Does that change anything in terms?
No,
of
because even though there's competitions going on, there's still guys that go out with the first group, and there's guys that go out with second groups, and there's guys that go out with the third group, and that hasn't really changed. There's been a little bit. There's been some guys that have gotten 2 reps, and some guys that have gotten 1 reps and gone back and forth. We've done some of that, but it really doesn't change. Obviously, the one thing I would say changes is you just don't have as many reps for the 3s. It's more of a 1s and 2s dominated practice.
James, if you were to need to rely on J.B. Nelson in a potentially first-team role this season, what's your confidence level there, and what has he shown thus far in 2023?
Yeah, we went into this year feeling like JB was going to factor in either as a starter or starter type reps is how I would have viewed him coming into the season, and he's built on that. His habits are a lot better in terms of how he practices and approaches meetings and everything else. You can make the argument he may be our most physical offensive lineman that we have. I know talking to our defensive linemen, they got a ton of respect for him. So we expected him to play a significant role this year, either way.
Hey James, you named a captains on Saturday or maybe before that. You haven't commented on the group. Can you talk about the group and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, so we voted on 3 captains, may have been at the end of spring, to go into the summer with. And then we held out all summer and really mostly through training camp to see who developed into that next role and kind of leave that out there, for competition over the summer. And it's worked out really well. So I think we got a strong group of veterans. I think the coaches and the players and the staff all kind of see it the same way. I think we probably have a decent number of them that are more lead by example than verbal like we had last year. But I think it's a really good group, and when they do speak, everybody listens because they're not, I wouldn't say they're outgoing type of guys in the first place. So we talked about the leadership looking different this year than it did last year. That doesn't mean it can't be just as good or even better, but it was going to be different rather than 4 guys or 5 guys that were very vocal and demonstrative from a leadership perspective to maybe more of a group that do it through actions, and then maybe leadership council even having a more significant role. So I'm pleased with the overall group. I wasn't sure if we'd have 6. I thought we may have 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and 1 on special teams. But Malik Mega got a ton of votes on special teams as well. So I feel really good about really all 6 of those captains.
How has Dion Barnes handled his first training camp as a coach? I know you spoke highly of him in the spring.
Really good. His players love him. He's very, very, very demanding. He's very transparent and authentic with them, which I think is important. There's still some growth that's happening every day with going from being a GA to a full-time coach in a top 10 program in a Power 5 institution. There's an adjustment period, but he's handled it extremely well. He's doing very well. I think the defensive staff has also done a really good job, but he's probably way ahead of where most people would expect and anticipate. And that's coaching his guys on the field, that's meeting room expectations, that's teaching scheme, that's recruiting. He's doing really well. I'm proud of him.
Which specialists have impressed you thus far, and have you found that consistency that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think however this thing plays out, I do think going out and getting some veterans to come in here and create competition has been really good for us. I think Sanders' development because of the competition, I think is dramatic, and I don't know if that happens without the competition. And I would say that's happening at both kicker, punter, and really kickoff as well. I would say Dzansky is probably the one guy that's pretty much solidified himself, and there's a pretty significant gap between the other two. I think the other two are pretty good, but there is a significant gap.
No matter who's under center for week one, describe.
We had last question.
I'm sorry.
I'll take it.
I appreciate that, Coach.
Just because your hair is so flawless.
I totally appreciate that. Describe the situational significance of having a lot of your starting offensive linemen back, especially a guy like Ogu.
Yeah, it starts up front on both sides of the ball with the offensive line and the defensive line. We've worked really hard at recruiting those positions and developing those positions. And obviously when you get a guy like Olu Fashanu back, who's played a ton of football and done it at a high level, to lead that group, and especially with a first-time starting quarterback on his blind side, obviously there's a lot of value in that.